What's up guys, and welcome to the weekly Q&A. Before jumping in, I need to say a quick thank you to our newest Patreon Jedi Master, Richard Leach. Thank you so much for your support, Richard. You have no idea how much you helped us out. Also, at the end of this video, I'm going to be announcing the winner of last week's giveaway, so just make sure you stay tuned for that. Our first question this week comes from Wasty Dest, who asks why Palpatine could sometimes be seen praising Vader for trying to overthrow him. We can see that in the Darth Vader comics. And yet, on the other hand, the Aftermath trilogy seems to hint that he wanted to achieve immortality and rule indefinitely. And then we also have Operation Cinder thrown into the mix, where it's like if he dies, then he didn't want the Empire to be around at all. So what's the deal with the Emperor and Vader? What was the Emperor's endgame for Darth Vader? I see Palpatine as a guy that kind of wants to have his cake and eat it too. When he sees that Vader is going through all this subterfuge to try to take over the Empire for himself, he's kind of proud because that is the Sith way. And there have been a couple times where he's been like, I don't think Vader's truly devoted to this. And he does want his apprentice to be strong. But on the other hand, I don't think he wants him to be too strong. I don't think he wants to be overthrown. And I think that's just true of the Sith in general. You have the whole master and apprentice thing. And for the Sith to grow as an order, the apprentice has to learn everything he can from the master and then prove that he's better and stronger by killing the master. There's never been a time in history, legends, or canon that I can think of where the Sith master was killed and he was like, yay! Like, they're always not thrilled about it. So I think that this isn't something that's unique to Palpatine, but I do think he took it kind of a step further. I don't know that I would say he definitely wanted immortality, but there are some hints in Aftermath that point towards that. But I think that Operation Cinder was kind of put in place just in case Vader got a little too strong. Like, people have asked me before, what would Vader's role in Operation Cinder have been if he were alive? I don't think he would have had one. In fact, I think he would have been a target. I think that Palpatine, being the spiteful guy that he is, he wanted most of his empire to be destroyed because he felt like it failed him, that all of his citizens allowed him to die. And he didn't want that. So I feel like the most likely scenario for him dying is Vader killing him, and he knows that. So I think Vader would have been a target. I don't think he would have taken part in Operation Cinder. We're probably never going to know that for sure. But yeah, I see Palpatine just kind of wanting it both ways, and I do think he was encouraging Vader for selfish reasons just because he wanted a strong apprentice, but he was still just kind of, watching his back, like all Sith Masters have to do. Zach Burkett wants to know if I think Luke was correct in the Last Jedi deleted scene with the caretakers when he tells Rey that a true Jedi would not interfere in the attack, that they would only act to maintain balance. I don't really think that that's true of the Jedi that we're familiar with, like anyone from the Clone Wars and beyond, ObiWan, Anakin, Ahsoka, Luke. I think all of them would have rushed to help the caretakers like Rey did. What I think is more likely is that he was trying to teach her a lesson, and it probably came from one of the sacred texts. He probably read something that was like, the Jedi Order and the Force is all about balance, and we're only going to act if it helps maintain balance. We're not here to save lives or something like that. Whatever he read, it just didn't sit well with him, and it probably further cemented the idea that the Jedi Order needed to end, and that's what he was trying to communicate with Rey. Chase Van Dyke asks why Lucasfilm isn't more strongly connecting the sequel trilogy with the prequel trilogy. For example, why not have the base on Crait be an Old Republic base instead of an Old Rebel base? Let me start with that example because I do think that it's important and that it makes sense that that's a Rebel base first. Just because Leia had history there, and the Resistance needs a reason to know why it exists at all. And if it were a Republic base, then all the tech in there would be 50-ish years old, and 30 years is already pushing it. So I feel like Clone Wars era stuff would just not work at all. Although, like, I mean, I'm with you that it would have been cool for them to be flying lats around or what have you. But let me go on to your deeper question, and I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit here. We did get mention of Darth Sidious and the Clone Wars era Jedi Order from Luke in The Last Jedi. We got a mention of clone troopers in The Force Awakens. So there are connections, but I totally agree with you that there could be more. What I think that the strongest connections between the sequels and the prequels are more thematic, and that's great. But I feel like it would still be cool to see some more in-universe historic stuff as well. Like, I'm on the same page with you there. And you can't deny that of the new content that's coming out, not just movies, but books and comics and all that, the vast majority of it is original trilogy, or I should say the vast majority of it takes place after Revenge of the Sith. And we haven't gotten a lot that's Clone Wars era or before, and I really hope that that changes. Honestly, and I don't know here, but I do probably think that when The Force Awakens was coming out, Lucasfilm was probably a little bit hesitant about the prequels, because, I mean, people vocally, the same way they are with The Last Jedi, they just flamed the prequels. And now I feel like we are shifting where the prequel haters have died down and the prequel lovers are being much more vocal, and I think that's fantastic. So I do think that the attitude is going to shift. And J.J. Abrams is saying, reportedly, that Episode 9 is going to tie together elements of all three trilogies, all 9 movies. And, I mean, that's fantastic. I hope that he does that, and I hope he pulls it off well. So, like, I am kind of with you that I hope to see more connection. I feel like there could be more, but, you know, I also, again, playing devil's advocate, I feel like each trilogy needs to stand on its own to a degree, but, you know, more Easter eggs, like, I don't think that would necessarily be a bad thing. And now I've rambled through this question, but I hope I answered it for you. Kurt Wedden wants to know, at what point in Star Wars does something become just too out there, too weird, too zany? I'm kind of with you, Kurt, that I feel like Star Wars is a big ol' universe, it's a huge galaxy, and there's room to try just about anything. I guess I would prefer that Lucasfilm try weird stuff and continue to push the boundaries of what we enjoy. I don't want them to do that in every story, but I don't want them to just, like, keep rehashing the same things. It's a big galaxy, and I feel like there's room for all kinds of life. And with the amount of content that they're putting out, it's okay if they try something kind of out there and it doesn't land for me. Because in most cases, that's, like, just one-off stuff. Like, let's talk about Mount Sorrow from Star Wars Legends. It's a living mountain that had a face on it, and it cried and stuff. I didn't like it. Like, to me, that's way too far. But also, it's part of the Ewoks cartoon. It's something that can very easily just be ignored in the rest of Star Wars. I mean, it's a mountain. It's not going anywhere. And I should also point out that in canon, we got stories in the comics about living mountains. And I thought that that was actually pretty cool. Something that didn't land for me in canon was in the very first Poe Dameron arc, there was kind of like this kaiju fight. And I felt like it came out of nowhere. And I was like, this really isn't for me. But again, it's like on this one planet, I can accept that that life exists in the Star Wars galaxy. And then they left the planet, and they're probably never going back. So, like, it's fine. If something doesn't land for me, I'm perfectly fine to just be like, well, it wasn't for me, and I hope it doesn't show up again. I thought Jacob Gallup's question was a good follow-up to that, and he asks if I think some Star Wars fans can get a little too carried away with what is and isn't canon. Yes, I think that's absolutely true, and I'm including myself in that. In fact, I think that sometimes I can make that worse for some people that are having problems, I guess, dealing with it. Because I care very much about what is and isn't canon, mostly because I want to be accurate, though. But what I try to keep in mind, and what I think everyone needs to keep in mind, is that more important than canon or legends is just good stories. And, like, I love the X-Wing books from Star Wars Legends. They didn't happen in the canon universe, but I just don't care. Like, I still love those books. I still love those characters. Would I love to see them show up in canon? Absolutely. But it doesn't really bother me that I have to, like, shift over to the Legends universe to read that. It's fine. I guess what I'm trying to say is that just because something is Legends doesn't mean that the story itself is any less good, any less cathartic, or any less meaningful. That's it for patron questions. If you're a patron and you didn't see your question answered here, just head over to Patreon where I left you a written response. If you're not a patron, you can learn more by following the link in the description. Just $1 a month will get you access to extra Star Wars Explained content like roles in my Discord server or audio commentaries for the films like the one we did for A New Hope that just came out last week. On to YouTube questions. The Burger Hut 7 asks if there is an official way to pronounce Octo. I've heard it pronounced so many different ways, I just don't think it matters. And I think that's pretty much true for a lot of things in Star Wars. Kashyyyk, Kashyyyk, Twi'lek, Twi'lek, Han, Han, Leia, Leia, like, things are just pronounced differently all the time. If you want to go in-universe with it, it probably changes from planet to planet in different dialects in BASIC. But ultimately, I think it's just that there's a lot of weird names in Star Wars, and sometimes they get pronounced differently. So I just try not to nitpick that stuff. And I mean, there are things where, like if I hear someone call Yavin 4 Yavin, like something kind of goes off in my head. So I get the impulse when people correct me, but like I try to just let that stuff go because there are so many weird things in Star Wars. I mean, how many words are just like a bunch of consonants strung together by apostrophes? How are you supposed to pronounce that? So I just think that if there's something iffy and you don't know how to pronounce it, just pronounce it the way you want. Just whatever sounds natural to you, you go with that. We'll all do our own things and it'll all be fun. Shadow Striker wants to know what my favorite moments of the Clone Wars are. That's pretty easy. It's everything that has to do with Savage Opress. I really, really love his story, but specifically his death. That's probably my favorite moment. Because he gets stabbed by Sidious and like all of the dark side magic kind of seeps out of him and he transforms back into the person that he was before the Night Sisters got a hold of him. And the thing is, like, he was a good guy transformed into a monster to do terrible things. And then he becomes who he was in his last moments of life. And like, that is some rough stuff. That's one of my top Star Wars moments. I don't know why it resonates so much with me, but like I'm getting chills just talking about it. I really, really love that part. So yeah, Savage Opress, even with the crazy on the nose name, like I love that character. Jamie Smith asks if I like the fact that episodes 7 and 8 collectively take place over such a short amount of time when compared to, let's say, episodes 4 and 5. No, I don't really. I do think that the way that The Force Awakens ended, we had so many questions about Luke that we needed answers to, and I do think that picking things right back up where they left off, that's probably the best way to get us those answers. So I understand the decision and why it was made, but yeah, I still just am not thrilled with the idea that the sequel trilogy so far takes place over the course of one really eventful weekend. I think that episode 9 is going to have a pretty big time jump. I would guess probably 3 years, like we got in between A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. I don't know, it's just a guess, but I do think that we need a time jump to just get a little bit more history into the sequel trilogy, if that makes sense. Time Travel Pony wants to know why Darth Vader stopped Boba Fett from shooting Chewbacca on Cloud City. I think the real reason for this is probably just a behind-the-scenes development conversation where they're like, okay, so we're about to put Han in Carbonite. ooh, we should have Chewbacca freak out and throw some stormtroopers around. Someone was like, yeah, that's really cool. But wouldn't someone try to stop him or shoot him or something? They were like, yeah, I guess you're probably right, and we should at least show someone attempt that, but we can't kill Chewbacca. And then they were like, just have Darth Vader stop it, because he has enough authority that no one in the movie is going to be like, are you sure, Darth Vader? You don't want us to kill him? No one's going to question him. And for the most part, I bet in the audience, especially when you're seeing it for the first time, that's not what you're thinking about. It's just after the fact that we Star Wars nerds go like, I wonder why that happened. But since you asked, I will try to do an in-universe reason here. And I'm going to guess that it has to do with the trap for Luke. I mean, they have spent all this time torturing Han, torturing Chewie. They're just putting Luke's friends through anguish and pain so that Luke will sense it and come help them. At that point in time, Vader didn't know that Luke was on his way, and he definitely hadn't landed yet. So maybe all of Chewie's negative emotions, his fear, his pain, his anger, his confusion, like his sadness, everything he was feeling, that might have been more powerful in the Force than his death would have been. I don't know. I think that's kind of a flimsy guess, but it could work. Nick Gray asks if the endless quest for answers could ruin Star Wars. I think that it's a little extreme to say that it would ever ruin Star Wars, but I do think that we as fans should remember that we are a little bit spoiled when it comes to Star Wars, because we do get a lot of very minor details about very minor things. And I mean, I think it's fun. Obviously, we like that. But as a group, we can come off as a little bit untitled when we don't get the answers we want as fast as we want them. For example, I want to know Snoke's origins. I do. But his origins were not important to the story being told by the sequel trilogy. We didn't need to know them yet. I'm sure that we are going to learn them, but I'm willing to be patient for it. And people need to understand that sometimes the story being told isn't going to be exactly the story that they want, and that's okay. But yeah, I think the important thing to remember is that story comes first. I mean, Star Wars is not about all of these minor details. And this is another thing, I don't know, problem, I guess, that I feel like sometimes I contribute to, because I love talking about these minor details. But just remember that Star Wars is about telling us these mythological stories with themes of family and good versus evil and so much more. The trivia, all of those details, that's the icing on the cake, not the cake itself. That's all the time I have for questions this week. If you want to leave a question for next week's video, just put it in the comments below, or sign up for Patreon to join our weekly Q&A discussion. Last week, we had a giveaway for an autographed photo of Finn signed by John Boyega, and the winner is Adam Bedell. So congratulations, Adam. Thank you to everyone who entered. Also, next week, I think we're going to have another giveaway, so keep an eye out for that. We're trying to organize it. But if you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.